Hi, I'm Jay. Today we're taking an old Universal 2, we're going to shine it up and make it usable for many, many years to come. Stay tuned. So, I'm going to trust that the other camera's been running the whole time. I'm going to trust that the audio is still working properly. And good afternoon. So we are in the garage. I have a couple things that I'd like to show everybody. So first thing we have, and this was a vise that I found on the eBay and just had it on my watch list. Just because I thought it was interesting. The offer that the seller made was a good enough offer where I didn't mind spending a few bucks. One, to cure my curiosity, and you know, it's an interesting vise. This is an older, and during editing I'll have to zoom in on these, but it's an older vise, I'm guessing from the late 70s, early 80s. A typical vise that you would find in a lot of box sets. It's a India-made vise, and it's from the time actually where the made in India materials, specifically for fly tying, were half decent. Now the interesting thing about this vise, and it's a no-name vise as far as I can tell, is the straight shaft. I suspected that this was a DIY kind of modification. And once I got it, it's obvious this was heated at one point, and it has a few hammer marks on it. It's probably put in a vise to be bent straight. I thought it was a neat find, something that would be interesting for my collection. And to be honest, I might put this in the vise and just tweak it just a little bit more to get this nose just slightly down, just a degree or two, to make it perfectly parallel to the tabletop. But a neat addition. You know, this is something from when there really wasn't a whole lot of tools for fly tying. So neat little vise, and like I said, this is a no-name, made in India, but a nice little vise. But that's not really why we're here. So did pick up a Universal 2 recently. It's a decent, not too bad of a shape, a little bit of oxidation. You can actually see on the wheel pretty clearly the oxidation, also on the jaws. Overall, the finish is still pretty solid. It is a little smooth here in the top, so it has had a little bit of use. Functionally, it's not bad. Does have a little bit of play, especially if I unlock the jaws. You know, there's a lot of play in this jaws assembly. So, but what we're going to do today is we're going to take this all apart, clean it up, make some modifications to it, little things that I do to a Universal 2, returning it back to service so it can be what I think is probably one of the top 3 vices that I would recommend to use for tying bucktails, specifically streamers and jigs. So let's, I got to grab a couple things. I did forget my O-ring kit, but bear with me. I'll grab that real quick. I'm just going to leave the cameras running. So we are back. So what I like to do every time I get a new vise is I kind of, you know, just take a quick look. I like to make sure that the stop and spring, how they feel, I check that out. I usually make some sort of visual note where this stopping pin in the hole is. Like I've explained in other videos, I like it in the 4 to 5 o'clock position. This just happens to be in about the 1 o'clock position. Not a big deal. It's just a personal preference of mine, and you'll find these in different configurations, and I just believe it's how the threads were started and how this piece was started to screw it in and tighten it in. But really, not a big deal. The only other thing I notice on this is it's just missing the flat piece, the washer, I guess you could call it, on the C-clamp here. That's not really a deal breaker for me. You know, if I had a table, if I was using this on my bench, I would just add an 1/8 inch piece of plywood or something just to protect the table, to keep that from digging in. But really that doesn't really hamper the way this actually works. So I'm not bothered by that at all. So to disassemble, what we're going to do is we're just going to unscrew the knob. I like to check, make sure this actually does not have any spacers or washers here at the end. Some do, some don't. I guess it's okay if they don't. Just kind of looking at this visually. This is slightly bent, this ring, and I'm not sure if it's out of line or not. We'll take a look at that once we get it all apart. But you can unlock the locking mechanism to take out the jaws, and then, oops, need the glasses for this. Using different cameras today just because I'm out in the garage. Just grab yourself some sort of pro pick, miniature screwdrivers. My dad was a salesman and he repaired office equipment going way back before even copy machines were a thing. But these screwdrivers, these mini screwdrivers are always handy for this type of work as well. Just to push out this pin. And this one might take a little bit more. This might take a little bit more to get it out. So I usually do this in the house, in the workshop, in the basement, where I have a better toolbox. But I think we're going to have all the tools that we need here. So I just ran out real quick, ran in the house real quick just to get a couple punches. Both of these would probably work just fine, though the smaller one will help push this pin through if it's stuck. But I have a 1/16 and a 1/8 punch. And we'll just get our Tanya Harding, and the 1/8 is a little big. And once we got that loose, it actually fell out. So I checked this little pin just for any rough spots. Occasionally on the ends they'll be worn over, and I like to take a file to them. But once that's out, we have the jaws that come out as so. And for these, take a good look. You can see there's a fair amount of rust, surface rust on here, but the threads look fine. I double checked the hole here just to see if there's any rough, sharp edges, and occasionally I'll take a small needle file to that as well. I also check the slot in the jaws just to see if if the surfaces line up on either side, and we'll take a little bit of a file to that as well. So we got a couple inserts for the vise. These are just a softer aluminum. I'm not really going to Gorilla Tighten the vise, but I do want to put some pressure on it just to hold everything in place. And right now we're concentrating on the end of the vise with the jaw, with the open end of the jaws. So also on my desk, I got myself some 400 grit sandpaper, and I have some crocus cloth. You could also use an emery cloth, something with a nice fine grit. We're not looking to take material away, we're just shining up the surface, taking that rust off. And there's two things that you can do, all right? So from my tying table, I have a little bit of lacquer thinner. Sometimes just a little bit of lacquer thinner on a cloth works nicely. That's already taken off a lot of that surface rust. Now that we're out in the garage, I got some brake cleaner here. I got a carb cleaner up here. I got some WD-40. I got a few different things that would work really well taking this rust off. But what we're going to do is I have my nice old can of 3-in-1 oil. I put a couple drops, and then we can go with the sandpaper. And I'm just going to lightly sand this. Takes off the surface rust. If there are any small burrs on the opening, it will actually smooth those down in this process. If I see that the burrs on this are a little bit high, I might go with a needle file. I'll just take a round one. Kind of scratch that up like so. But this does about 3 sides. And we'll give it a turn. And a little bit of oil again. So I kind of like to do this at my bench where I cast the jigs. It's something I can do pretty much any time of the day. It's very quiet. I'm in the far corner of the garage, or the basement rather. I don't bother anybody when I'm doing this. And like most fishermen, I wake up early, even on days that I'm not fishing. So instead of waking up the rest of the family, I do something that's productive and quiet and out of the way. So I haven't had any videos out recently. I'm a little bit behind. I actually injured my right hand, the tendons in my index finger here and the back of my hand. It actually really hurts doing this a little bit. It feels a little bit, how can I describe it? It's kind of arthritis-y. That's what it feels like. But it's been a few weeks. And I guess I ended up hyperextending the tendons. I swear it was my finger that dislocated and came out. That's the story I'm going with. And the first couple days, it didn't really bother me much at all. It hurt when it happened and scared me. And I knew something had happened, but the first few days, it seemed okay, okay enough. And now, as the swelling has gone down and things are all stiffening up, it's taken a few more days, longer than I expected it to. So before I flip this over, I'm going to turn this around. I don't know if I can zoom in on that during editing, but there is a ding at the end of the jaws there. We're going to clean it up here because I just saw it. And again, just taking a needle file. And just getting those high points. Now I might do this off camera, but after we're done with everything and I assemble the vise, I will put this on a table and I'll close this tight and then do one last just quick little file just to knock down any high points to get that nice and smooth. So let's turn our piece around so I can get to the other end. Really? Yeah, let's see how this crocus cloth works. You have to put enough pressure on the shaft of the jaws to hold it in place, but I really am not putting too much pressure on it because I'm not interested in crushing it in the vise. This crocus cloth works nice. I'm going to take a flat file. You can use any file that you feel comfortable with. I do have larger files, but with the smaller files you can be a little bit more precise. Not interested in taking off giant pieces of material. Not too bad. Not too bad. I do feel there are grooves in this that are just natural from use, from the pin as part of your stop here. Will rub against the jaws. So there are some imperfections, but there's nothing that's out of the ordinary. Nothing I can see is terrible. Take a nice look through the body of the vise, and that'll just need a little bit of cleanup, but it looks fine. I'm just looking for any really gross dirt, oxidation, anything like that. For this, I have a dowel that I use on my bench, but since we're out in the garage, we're just going to use a screwdriver. A nice long shaft screwdriver. And we're going to take a little bit of, well, even though we're in the garage, I'm tempted to use a brake cleaner. This is just off my jig table. It is my bottle of just lacquer thinner. How are we going to do this? We are going to, I usually just have a small square of cotton shirt. So I have this rag soaked, saturated, at least on a large section of it, with lacquer thinner. Oops. We're just gonna push that through a few times. I do like using the dowel because the dowel is thin enough where I can just put the cotton around the dowel and it's like cleaning a rifle barrel, shotgun barrel. But that's all. It's, you know, it's not terribly dirty, a little bit. Before I forget, we will look at the outer parts of the jaws. Now this is oxidized here. These are aluminum. So this is oxidized, but not terrible. We can clean that up. And again, just looking for some rough edges. The holes that are used to lock the jaws in place, my very first vise that I tied with for about 10 years, after that length of time, these holes they really get worn out, become oblong. You can really feel the play when you twist your jaws back and forth. But these look good. These look fairly new. There's no burrs or rough edges. So just like the jaws, take a little 3-in-1. I don't know why I keep closing that. And we'll go back to the crocus cloth. Oxidation isn't too bad here. It is coming off. Actually shines the aluminum up pretty nicely. Crocus cloth is nice because it doesn't break. So this ring does move. There's no grit or anything, grime, keeping it in place. This is a pretty clean vise. Appears that it just sat in the basement for some time. Kind of a damp environment. Oh, that one. Go to the sandpaper for this. The oxidation on this end was a lot thicker. But as you can see, it doesn't take much to clean this up. This end wasn't so bad. I'm not going to flip it in the vise. I just flipped my sandpaper. We're going to call that good. Let me hit this one more time. This, not sure if you can tell, shiny, oxidized, shiny. So we're just going to give a little bit more attention to this part right here. I really think this must have sat in a basement or something. Much better. Can still see a little bit, but for the most part, it doesn't look too bad. So let's see, will this attach to this bench? It will not. All right, so let's see, nothing that a piece of scrap wood can't solve. That kind of hurt my trigger finger. Jeez. All right. Like I said, arthritis-y. All right, so all I did was just lower the camera, attach the vise to the tabletop, and now we can reassemble. I give everything a good cleaning. Again, we're looking, make sure that that's nice and clean on the inside. Everything looks good. So to assemble, just reverse the process, and my pin, line up the holes. You can use your same let's see, get a little hammer, tappy tap. Why does that seem so difficult? It was kind of difficult popping it out, and once it got past the edge, it fell right out. So I'm assuming that the edge that I'm trying to, the side that I'm trying to put it in is the side that's tight, which is good. You don't really need this, you don't want this flopping around, you don't need it to fall out. Just give it some tappy tap tap. There we go. So you want to make sure that that pin comes out on both sides and doesn't stick up past the edge. should be good. So this is going to go in the vise like so. Now often there is a washer here as well as one at the end, and there was neither on this, which is fine. Even though these are made in a factory, like widgets one after another, in a lot of ways they were individual pieces. So I have enough parts to be able to compare, and you can see that some jaws are longer than other jaws. This piece might be longer from one vise to another. I don't know if it was the person that was making it or if they would farm this out to more than one machine shop. But before we assemble this, what I'm going to do, and this is just a cheap O-ring, assortment of O-rings. And what I'm looking for is the 3/8 by 1/2 by 1/16. AO12 is what the part number that you normally see. But that's what I'm just going to take an O-ring. We're going to put it over and slide it down to that stop. This does a couple different things. It takes up any slack that there might be. My dad's vise for years and years, what he would do to remedy this, he had two different things. One, he had spacers, extra spacers from Universal that he would put in there. But if that was just too difficult, not difficult because it was fairly easy to do, but you know, if it was too much of a bother for him, because what was much quicker is he would take some 30-pound mono, put a loop or two around it, tie a knot, and nip it, and that would be a nice washer or bushing, however you want to explain it, to take up this space. But now we can lock this back into place, and as you can see, it's solid. There's no, the vise is wiggling on my bench because I only have this scrap piece of wood screwed into the top of the bench, but there's no wiggle room here. That's nice. If this is a little bit too tight, we'll go back in the box and look for a thinner O-ring. That is a possibility, or it might not need it. I've done this and decided to keep the O-ring off. So let's screw this back on, and let's just look at this. So I'm sure you can't see this. I'll try to zoom in as best I can, but usually there's some sort of spacer or washer here, and there's not. But I don't see any space here. This fits, the tolerances on this are actually pretty good. And there the jaws are nice and tight, closed up. We're going to take our round file. Just hit this one more time, just to make sure that both sides are equal. Turn it over. The bottom side, this is where we had that burr that we noticed. Clean that up nicely. Go to the flat file here. I'm not reshaping this, I'm not changing the profile. just making sure that both halves meet at the same spot. Smoothing off any burrs that your thread could catch on to. Put a little bit of care into this, because this is a nice vise. This actually is a pretty solid vise. So we have a slight bit of play here, tiny bit. I would not be worried about this at all. There's no play side to side, left to right. All right, so let's take this knob off one last time. And we're gonna add some oil on the outside of this. And then we'll take our, let's see, we have 200 grit sandpaper here. You can take your scraps because at this point we're just cleaning up any surface, just a little bit of surface oxidation here. Just cleaning it up slightly. You're not going to get it off 100% because this part of the tool actually has some knurling to it, so you're not going to be able to sand, you know, because it's not a smooth surface 100%. But we're just cleaning it up. As you can see, that already looks better. This outside edge, definitely this was sitting in a garage or a basement somewhere, most certainly. This outside edge is actually rust. Another good tool to use for this is Scotch pad. I have those in different colors, green, white, black. Ouch. Squeezing that didn't feel good. Where is my cloth? There it is. There we go. Already 10 times better. Now you can spend as long or as little amount of time on this as you want. I suppose somebody who wanted to could polish this up to a nice sheen. Let's see, I just noticed something on this. I'm going to clean this up a little bit more to take a look at it. It's not loose, so I don't think it's a crack, but I do believe it's from the machining process. There's a deeper groove here, and it's on two out of three sides, 3 out of 4 sides. Looks like this was supposed to be it's supposed to curve down nice and gradual, but it looks like they stopped and made kind of a square edge. It's just making sure that wasn't a crack. But that's all there is to this. Like I said, you can really go to town and shine this up if you wanted to. But we just want to make this so it's usable. This is something we want to use. I'm going to do the same thing to the knob, the lock. Again, just to shine it up, to clean it up just a little bit. You can actually unscrew the knob and take this whole piece off. Usually if you do that, you really have a chance of marring this because it is only aluminum. So I don't typically unscrew this unless I have to, but just clean that up just a little bit, took the oxidation off. We can clean up the flat surface of that lock. Beautiful, perfect. So take our 3-in-1 oil, add a drop to that shaft. Now there's a spring in here. Just work it back and forth to get that lubricated. I'm going to add oil here at the jaws where it comes into contact with the aluminum shaft. Now I didn't see the need to add any bushings. There wasn't really any play. You know, north, south, east, west, up, down, back, forth, right? If there was, there's that other video I have. When I first did this, where the trick I use is just to use masking tape, just a touch, like a little diamond-shaped triangle, square, to take up that space. And it's just something that I replace every 6 months or so. But we can add a few drops of oil. We're going to spin it as just to distribute that as we assemble it. Wipe away any excess. Now I'm not doing anything to the outside of this. It is a little dusty. You can just take our oily rags when we're done, just to wipe off the outside. Like I said, you can tell this vise did get a little bit of use. The top is smoothed down. That's just from constantly touching it, resting your hand on it as you're tying. We'll reassemble this. Drop of oil in the end. So as you can see, this is stiff, and that has to do with this O-ring. Now, I wouldn't mind tying on it as is. I think this is that little bit of play, absolutely fine. When you unlock it and try to turn it, it will turn, but it'll stick in place. So if I turn this, if I turn my jig a quarter turn so I could look at the side, I can continue tying on this, and this isn't going to turn on me. There's enough friction here. that has to do with this O-ring. So for the purposes of science, let's take this apart and remove the O-ring. Reassemble. Do I have a hook in here? I do not. What do I have that is hook-like? Something that I can lock in the vise. Try not to cut myself, boys and girls. Do this again. I put this blade in the vise just because it's the only thing I have out here in the garage. But if I unlock this, look how you can rotate this all day. I'm not a fan of this. Okay, so this is a perfect personal preference. I don't want the play. I don't want this play back and forth. So what can we do to fix that? The O-ring that I like to use is a little thick. Is this thinner? I know it's smaller. Now I have the luxury of a bag full of old parts. It's not really something that the average person would have. If you're able to find something like this on the eBay and you want to make it good as new. So first, the easiest thing for the average person is just finding the O-rings. That's not going to work. That's already broken. So let me show how I would go about actually, you know, how I'm going to fix this. And bear with me, another trip back in the house, and I will get a bag of parts. So I have a large assortment of parts. There's some O-rings that are, I believe, the same. Let's look at these. I believe these are the same size. They just happen to be the first ones that I ever had. But I do believe they're the exact same. They might be slightly bigger, but just as thick. Yeah. Just as thick. Here's an example. These are the same pieces. The one on the top goes to this vise, and you can see it's a ½ inch longer, the one on the bottom. So, let's see. What do we got here? So I have a bunch of old Universal bushings. They're different thicknesses. So we'll just take one that looks like it might be, this is on the thick side compared to the one that was next to it. And these fit on fairly snug. You have to put them on straight. And they won't pass over this pin if it's sticking out on either side. There we go. So now we have, instead of the rubber bushing, we have a Universal Vise bushing, and already we can see it's taken up about half of that, of the play that we had there. Nope, I should have grabbed a jig. Let's see. We will lock our blade back in the vise. Much better. So we've taken up some of this slop, this left to right slop. We can spin this very easily, and it actually will rotate, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 turns after you let it go. Let's see what else we have on here. Not sure if you can see these. They are super tiny. So this one's very thin. Next couple are a little bit thicker. There's one on here that's pretty thick. Let's see. I do not believe that these are standard. You know, I don't think I can go to a hardware store and buy a bushing that's the right inside diameter. So let's take off this one. This one was the widest of all of them. And again, it's pretty snug. You have to put this on straight or else it won't slide down. That looks nice. Ooh, that took up all of it. Let's see if we can rotate it. Ready? That was a good fix. So, by adding a little bit wider bushing here from old Universal parts, Universal 2 parts, these bushings are not something, as far as I could tell, that you could purchase at any old hardware store. And there's different thicknesses of bushing here. Just like I said, these were a vise that were made in a factory, like widgets, one after another. But there's tiny differences between them, between one and another. So this set of jaws that are holding my bushings, the same size, the same length as the jaws that are in this vise, would probably work just fine. But as you can tell, and I will zoom in on this when I edit, these jaws are a little bit more pointy compared to the jaws that came with this vise. Here's one, again, the same size.
but the jaws have a more prominent point on them. This is an interesting one, and I don't know why they did this. There's spiral cut in this. And I don't know if somebody forced it with the stop screwed in too far, so it gouged this out, but it looks pretty uniform. Same size. What else do I have in here? This one has a note on it. It looks like my handwriting. I have a notation on here that this is short. And yes, yes. So the end here is about 1/4 of an inch longer. This is almost as long with the jaws in as this section here. And if we measure, this end is slightly shorter. It doesn't quite line up to the back of the vise. So again, it's almost like a custom vise. Not sure why these jaws are in this bag with the oil. This is even a shorter profile on the jaws compared to what's in the vise. And this is about 1/4 of an inch longer. This comes out past the edge of the knob. Very interesting. I've never looked terribly close at this bag. In here I have 2 or 3 extra pins. Here is the locking barrel without the internal. There's a spring and then the part that you pull out here. That would go in this. The plunger, I guess you would call it. I'll just keep all that stuff in there. Put that stuff back. Let's see, these can go in there too, why not? This is interesting. This is the handle that you screw into the bottom of the table, except that it's straightened or never bent, I suppose. I wonder what that was made for. Four different vices, or jaws, 4 different jaws. We got at least 2 different sizes, the taller one being a lot shorter, fatter set of jaws, maybe a standard size jaw as compared to maybe a midge size jaw, right? Here's a complete locking assembly with the plunger, the spring, so we have an extra top. That's the part here that pulls out. But as you can see, this is the complete assembly. Has the plunger, the spring inside this barrel. As you can see, there are marks on the outside of this. So you do mark them up when you unscrew them. That's why we didn't remove the ones on this one. And I'm not sure if you could see that this was my first vise, and I ended up repairing it before I just broke down and got myself a new one. And I'm not sure how well this will show up, but the end of this is broken. That should be squared off. So, you know, this was after 15 years or so. It finally wore down. And what was happening is I was just getting an awful lot of play in the shaft of the vise. But always save your old parts. You never know when you have to cannibalize something, or at least have an example when you got to go to a machine shop, right? But I think that's going to do it for us. I wanted to get in front of the camera and just do something. It's been quite some time. I'm behind in my videos, and just hoping I got to get this this healed. Because I am still experiencing a little bit of stiffness and pain, and not to be a baby about it, but it's swollen a little bit. It's the end. We're getting into the early evening, and I've been out in the garage just tinkering and oops, hold on, tinkering and doing whatever in the garage. So my hand hurts. Make sure I get all the parts back to where they were, so I don't forget them. So I hope you enjoy what we did here today. Taking an old Universal 2 eBay find and cleaning it up and getting it back into service, so it will provide many, many years of enjoyment tying jigs, flies, and streamers. But I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Feel free to share any of our videos, as it does help increase awareness for the channel. Check out the website, jworthhandtied.com. So until next time, guys, get yourself an old vise and fix it up. Keep tying in tight lines.